Hey everybody, this is Christy Lynn Allen from the Beez Kneez. I am making this video to show you how to assemble your own bee equipment. When you get started, it can be a little confusing as to what the parts are and how to put them together. If you want to save money and put them together yourself, it's not terribly difficult, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. With simple tools, but also I'll do a little demo on pneumatic tools for the frames. We'll start with the boxes. There are a couple different sizes of boxes. You have your super or medium box, and then you have your deep box, which beekeepers generally use for the brood nest, and they generally use mediums or supers for the honey production part of it. But you can use whatever size box you want. The bees don't really care all that much. If you can't lift as much weight, the medium box, a lot of people will use those throughout. Or in my case, I will use either one single deep box and then mediums above it, or I will use two deep boxes with mediums above it, depending on what kind of beekeeping I'm doing. So when you buy the equipment unassembled, it's going to come in different pieces. And to show you the pieces quickly, I will show you on what we call a nucleus colony box, but every box will come unassembled like this, where you will have two long sides with handles, and then your two shorter sides with handles. And when you're putting these together, the most important thing to remember is that you want the handles facing up on both sides. I've worked with kids before where you let them loose with your pieces and a hammer and nails, and the handles will end up on the inside sometimes. So just be cautious of that. And so I'm going to go over here and quickly show you how to assemble a box. What you're going to need are some nails for the joints, and these joints generally come with holes pre-drilled into them, but if for whatever reason they missed a hole, you can most of the time just nail through it, but if you want to be extra careful, you could pre-drill a hole in its spot. So you're going to want, I use 8D 2.5 inch long. 8D is the girth of the nail, and that's the size that seems to work best for super and deep boxes. So the other thing you're going to need is some wood glue. Wood glue is really important because it really holds the box together in addition to the nail. So when you start, you're going to pick a short side and a long side, and then you're going to put wood glue in between all the joints. So I did one side, and then I'm going to identify handle facing up, the other handle facing up, which one I'm going to join to that side, and I'm going to wood glue the same joints on that. And then really you're sliding these joints together. Oops, that's the wrong one. Make sure your sides match. Okay, and I'll want to use wood glue again on the joints. And sometimes the wood over time can dry out and warp just a little bit, so you can use a hammer to encourage the side in. Okay. Now that you have your top, or your one of your sides, long sides and short sides, I like to take a nail And I'm going to start on this side and use my hammer box here as support. And I usually do one nail on one side and then a nail on the other side. Sit down and do this with the box on the ground. Just put some cardboard down underneath it so you don't wreck the wood on the joints when you're hammering. Okay, so now I've got, this is secure and put together. So now I'm going to take my other side and I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure handles are up. Glue those sides. Okay. Once again, I'll give it some encouragement. All right. And then you can actually use the table as your support as you're hammering this in. You're going to want to make sure your box is square. I generally don't worry about squaring it with an actual, good carpentry square because they generally come pretty square cut anyway. But if you are anal or you just want to make sure, it's a good thing to check. So. And another nail on another side. Alright. Good idea to keep a paper towel handy for any glue that drips out. Alright, and then you do your last side the same way. Again, glue on all the joints, and then you join it together. Let's see, I think, yeah. Okay, so that's how you do boxes, and just because this is a nuke box, it doesn't matter. It's going to be the same for all sizes of boxes. So we'll put that aside. And now I'm going to show you the frame parts. So when you're doing wax foundation, you're going to want to pay attention to the kind of frame you have and whether or not you're going to wire that frame to support that wax foundation. So frame parts, there are 3 parts to frames, well 4 parts, but 2 of the parts are the same. One part is your top bar, so this is going to be the very top of your frame. I can show you closer. So your top bar goes on top. End bars are the longer piece on the end. And then you have your bottom bar, which goes on the bottom. And these, most end bars come with holes in them, and that's so you can do wiring. And before you assemble your frames, it's a good idea, if you're going to wire them, to put in what we call these are little grommets that sit in the hole of that frame piece, and you get, if you buy a kit with the Beez Kneez, you'll get a little grommet tool that pushes that grommet into the hole. You see that? And you want to make sure, again, grommet hole is facing out. This is to protect the wood from tearing when you pull the wire through for tension. And you'll see what I mean when I do that. So I put the grommet in the little tool. It pushes that in. And there you have we do two grommets on each side. The way I'm going to show you how to wire, you're only going to use 2 wires. It saves material and it's just as stable and strong. So you can do your end bars, you can put the grommets in first and then assemble your frames, or you can put the grommets in after you're done assembling your frames. So I'll do the other side, and that way you're going to have 4 grommets in each frame, 1 on each side. Like that. Okay, so back to parts of the frame. This is your top bar. These are your end bars. And this is your bottom bar. And when you're assembling the frame, you want to use your wood glue again. And you're going to put it in the joints that connect. Okay? And then you're going to connect your end bars to your top bars. And you can use your table here. There. So now my end bars are in my top bars. And your bottom bar is on the bottom. All I did so far was put the glue in. Now, same thing as with the boxes, is you want glue and you want nails. And for the frames, you're going to want little frame nails like this. Again, you can get them at hardware stores. Just look for the smaller kind of nail. This, I believe, is 1 inch. Or you can get them from beekeeping supply companies too. So you're going to want to put 1 nail Okay, I'm going to go on the other side quick. You can see. So you're going to want to put a nail in the top. Okay, my nail is right there. You can see that. And if you want to be extra secure, you can put 2 in. Remember, when you're beekeeping, the frame is the part that gets pried on the most because you're taking your hive tool, and when you're pulling a frame out, you're going to be prying up on this. And so it's really important that you make sure your top bar is really connected to your end bars. And I'll show you a little trick for extra security. So over time, if you only have nails that are facing vertically, when you pry on that, eventually it's going to pry, once the glue kind of wears out its life, it's going to pry that top bar out. So one way to make it last longer is you take a nail. I'll come over here so you can see where I'm going to put it. So here's your top bar with the top 2 nails. You're going to take your nail and you're going to pound it horizontally in between the end bar and the top bar. And that way when you pry up, it's got extra resistance going across. So I'll do that over here. There. So you can see there's a nail going in this way and 2 nails going in that way. And that will make a really strong connection for your frame. The last nail you're going to put in, you're going to do both sides. So I did this side, and you're going to want to do the other side. And then you want to do the bottoms. It's not as important to put the cross nail on the bottom. It's pine too, it's softwood, so you don't want to put too many holes in the smaller, skinnier parts. Plus, you're only prying on the top. So that's the most important spot. So turning it over, I'm going to put my nail in the bottom here. There. I'll show you. So then you've got 1 nail going there. And that's it for assembling your frame. As far as wiring the frame, I will put my grommets in and I will show you how to wire off of this particular frame. So again, grommet goes in this hole here. In this hole here. Okay. I'm going to do the other side. There. Oops. They're easy to drop, so make sure you scan the floor when you're done. And that one there. Sometimes the grommets don't go all the way in with your tool, so it doesn't hurt to give them a little pound on your side. I'm going to go over here again. Okay, and I will finish my frame so that when I wire it, it's all complete. So just for review, 2 nails on top. Okay. And 1 horizontally for that extra support. Okay, and 1 in the bottom. All right, so when you're wiring your frame, you will get a kit that comes with a couple different tools. This is for tensioning the wire, and I'll show you how in a minute how that works. This is for running the wire along the wax foundation once you get the wire installed. So I've got my spool of wire over here, and I actually put it on a bucket handle so that when I pull the wire, it comes off. Oop, and I have it tied here. Hold on 1 second. All right, so when you pull that wire, it comes off really easily and you don't end up with a big tangly mess. If you're a small beekeeper, you're going to have a spool that's much smaller, and you can put that on any number of different ways to spool that through in a similar way. Maybe a smaller bucket would be the answer there. Okay, so for wiring, what you're going to need is a hand stapler, and I really like these. This is called Duo Fast. It's a really nice hand stapler. Some of them don't really work that well or are kind of hard to grab onto when you're doing this work, but that's the one I really like. And you're going to want a pair of gloves because you're going to be pulling tension on this wire, and it can be hard on your hands. And also the end of the wire can poke you in the fingers, and it's sharp and it doesn't feel very good. So you're going to take your wire, and again, we'll switch sides. Okay, to show you up close. So I like to start, it doesn't really matter if you start on the top or the bottom. I'm going to run your wire through the grommet, just so you can see on the bottom here. Okay, you run it through. The other side, you can see that, kind of, okay? And then you're going to go through the top grommet. Now, one thing to be careful about is if you kink your wire, it will eventually snap when you're pulling tension. So make sure that the wire is not kinked before you pull tension. So then I run the wire through this end, and this is where you're going to have a little bit of slack that you want, that you will staple into the frame. So you can see there's the end of my wire coming through my grommet, and I'm going to push it up against the frame, and then I'm going to take my hand stapler and I'm going to staple it to the end of the frame, like that. Then I'm going to push that sharp end over itself so it doesn't poke me when I'm handling these frames. So I push that over, and then I staple again. So I've got two staples to hold the loose end of my wire in the frame. And then what you're going to do is pull this wire as hard as you can through to tighten it. And I'm right-handed, so I'm going to pull with my left hand. And it helps to pull it over the end bar, like that. And then you're going to staple on that side. And then you'll want wire cutter, pliers here, needle nose, to cut the wire, and then you bend it over this way. Sometimes if the wire is long enough, I like to curl it and then shove it into the grommet that's there, but you're still going to want to staple it one more time. So you've got 4 staples, keeping the wire tight on the ends there. Now, to create tension in this wire, that's what this handy-dandy tool is, and this can get really fun if you're dorky like I am. And you hold it against your body, and you squeeze this on the wire at the very end of the frame, and then you pull it toward you. And then you have a tensioned wire. You want it to sound like a guitar, okay? And that's really tight. So this is what you're going to embed your wax foundation in. Now there are 2 ways to do this. For extra stability, you can get what are called wedge top frames. And the frames are sold with a cut in this top bar so that you can pull off a piece of it. Oops. Okay. And it creates a little space in your top bar, and then don't lose this piece because you're going to need it. So this piece is going to sit over the hooks on your piece of foundation. So let me grab the foundation and I can show you what that looks like. All right, so this is pure beeswax foundation. And the reason that we use wax foundation versus plastic foundation, there's a couple of reasons. It's highly recommended now that you cycle out your frames every 3 to 5 years. And maybe you're not using your medium frames for honey, so you wouldn't cycle them out as much, but I still think it's really good to use the wax because the bees like to draw it out more. They're really sensitive to smell, and they really pick up on that this is pure beeswax rather than plastic coated in pure beeswax. So that's the other advantage of beeswax, pure beeswax foundation, is that the bees tend to draw it out quicker than they would plastic foundation. The other reason is we don't want to put a bunch of plastic in the landfill if you are going to cycle out your frames. So this foundation comes with these hooks in it. You can see on top. Again, they're sharp. Be careful when you're installing. But with the frames, they have grooves on the bottom bars. So you can see there's a groove here. And the foundation's going to slide in there on the bottom. And then you're going to rest the top of the foundation onto the top bar underneath that wedge that we pulled off. So I've got my wires in, and I'm laying my foundation down in the grooves in the bottom bar. So then you can see that my foundation is sitting nicely in the frame. I'll show you the other side where you can see the cross wires. You can't see the cross wires yet because I haven't embedded them into the frame yet. So then you take your piece, your wedge, and you replace it, or you put it back where you found it, but now your wax foundation is being held in there by that piece. And the way that you attach it is you take your stapler. You can do a couple of things. You can take your stapler and staple the strip back on that way. And the bees, after time, this will all get glued together with propolis and wax and things like that. Or you can take a nail and you can pound that strip in, which I don't like as much because then you have another nail to deal with. Actually, forget I said that. Don't use the nail. Use the stapler, or some people will. You can also glue that strip back. But now we have a completed wax foundation medium frame. Okay? Now the same thing is going to apply for a deep frame, except in order to save material and time, we just use the 2 middle wires, the 2 middle holes. You can just ignore the first and the fourth hole here. Just use these 2 middle holes. And the same thing will apply where you run your wire through. gloves on. And this time I'm going to go over because the frame's bigger. Pull your tension as best you can. Okay. There you go. I've got my 2 staples. And then that's what the other side looks like. You take your tensioner. Again, pull it towards you. Play the guitar. All right. One thing I didn't show you that I will show you right now is embedding that wire into your frame. So you're going to want to find a surface that is flat enough to receive your frame, that you can run your tool over. And with your kit, if you buy a kit from us, we have what's called an embedding board, and I'll just grab it to show you. Sorry, I thought I was prepared, and then you get doing stuff, and you realize you're not. So, do that better than I did for the video. Alright, so this embedding board has some different cuts in it to fit your frame, so that your foundation will lie flat on the frame, or on the piece of wood, right? So, this sits in those grooves, and then I'm able to take my tool and run it over the wax and embed the wax into the wire. Some people do this by heating up the wire, but you don't have to do that. Now, when I run my hand over this, you can't feel the wire. It's completely part of the foundation now. The other kind of frame that you can get and still do this, but not have the support cross wire, which is fine if you're doing it in the brood nest and you're not going to extract honey from those frames. You can you get what's called a groove top frame, which is the most commonly sold frame because of people who use wax foundation. You can just pop that wax foundation in to the grooves. So I showed you the wedge top that had a cut along the side. The groove, the groove top just has a groove, and it does not have a wedge that you pop out for the foundation. So it allows you to put a piece of wax foundation without hooks into this, and then you can embed the wire in. The only difference is that you don't have extra support from the hooks that are in that wedge top up above. And that's really important, more important for frames that you're extracting honey out of, because it's just wax foundation, it's pretty fragile even after the bees draw it out. But if you have these support wires, the extractors won't, with the centrifugal force, it won't pull the comb out. And honeycomb, for a beekeeper, drawn comb is really valuable. You want to be able to give it back to your bees the following year so that they can just put honey in it and they don't have to spend the energy making the wax comb. So, if you don't want to mess with doing the wedge top, the alternative is you get wax foundation but you ask that it doesn't have the hooks on it, or for whatever reason, if you decide you, if I've also cut these off before if I didn't have the right foundation for whatever reason, but basically it'll just come with both sides flush, and then you insert the wax foundation into those grooves, and then you do the wire embedding. So we covered assembling the boxes with nails and wood glue. We covered assembling and wiring a frame and embedding the wax foundation. If you start to get into beekeeping more and if you're doing this kind of work a lot more, you can build a jig to make it go faster. Or perhaps you're handy and this wouldn't take you long to do. This is a homemade jig. And it allows you to build 10 frames at a time with your pneumatic staple gun. So the way this works is it's just a frame, a square frame that is smaller than the frame that it sits on. Or I'm sorry, it's longer, and then you've got these rollers on the sides. You can actually buy these jigs from beekeeping supply companies where they'll use wood for your arms on the side. And what this does is it holds the frames into the jig upright. So you can kind of see this. You can imagine there would be 10 on each side, and then you put your glue on, and then you put your tops on, and then you use your nail gun to staple them really quickly, and then you turn the jig over and you can do the other side. But the most important thing to remember about assembling equipment is the wood glue and the nails, or if you have a pneumatic staple gun, you're going to want to use crown staples. These are, I believe, 1/4 inch. These are actually 1 1/4 inch. No, that's not right. Yeah, they're 1 1/4 inch long, and they're a 1/4 inch crown, meaning 1/4 inch width. And this is what you use in your staple gun when you're doing it with a pneumatic staple gun. So, the staples load in here. You have your air compressor, and then pow, 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 pow. You're just able to run through those very quickly. Anyway, I think I covered everything. Feel free to email me with any questions at Christy@thebeezkneesdelivery.com, KRISTY@thebeezkneesdelivery.com. Happy beekeeping and equipment assembly.